Hello and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us today, his turn in the rotation, as they say, State Representative Chris Hendricks is in.
How you doing, Jim? Thanks for having me again.
Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure to be here.
I thought it was funny there. You said you just saw this on your schedule yesterday, for crying out loud.
Yes.
And I know Karen, very efficient. She and I were talking early last week, so.
Oh no, yeah, no.
You got to check that schedule, young man.
But she's on the ball. Believe me, if it wasn't for her, I'd be gone.
It's interesting that as you and I sit here, really one of the big things that's been dominating, I guess, the news of Beacon Hill is just the redistricting proposal that came out last week.
Right.
And you know, subtle changes, I guess, when you really look at it, but there are changes in New Bedford. At the moment, there are 5 representatives that represent the city. The proposal calls for 4, and obviously some changes as to the way the city looks as far as where the reps' boundaries are, if you will.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the proposal, your thoughts on it. You are now all in the city.
Right. So just to backtrack a little bit, the big picture numbers-wise, so according to the census, the state overall got more populated, and it got more diverse, and most of that population increases happened in the gateway cities like New Bedford, Fall River,
over
Worcester.
100,000 now.
Almost all of the population increase happened in the gateway cities and in the eastern part of the state. So, so as we talked about earlier, Western Mass, they lost a state rep seat. It still has to be 160, but geographically,
right,
they're going to lose a representative.
Just on the aside, you look at the senator in the farthest end. That's an unbelievable district.
Yeah,
that senator has.
Yeah,
from
it's huge.
From one end of the state to the other, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and there are even some reps out there. I don't know what the current makeup's going to be, but Suzanne Whips. She's a rep out in Western Mass, and she has 12 municipalities in her in a rep district.
Right.
And it's hard. I have 2 currently. You hear people talk about having 3 or 4, how difficult that can be. But I can't imagine. Of course, each town has
2,000 people or something, but
right.
Still, it's geographically.
But having to go, all those different entities you have to deal with, it can be a problem, I would imagine. But so. To your question, in New Bedford, my district, as it's currently situated, includes most of the north end of New Bedford and the town of Acushnet. The new proposal has my district, as you said, entirely in New Bedford. The northernmost point would be in the Normandan area, around Branscombe Street, where I live. Mm-hmm. And then the district would go geographically south towards the northern part of the port of New Bedford, kind of, if you look where Merrill's is on the waterfront, kind of that area, that's where it would end, and it would go west into parts of Ward 4 and other parts of Ward 3 that I don't currently have. So it's technically a minority-majority district, which means that minorities demographically make up most of the district. So it presents, some new opportunities. I think it's great for the city to have, the folks in that district to be consolidated into one city, considering there's so many people in New Bedford now. I think it's only going to help New Bedford. And so, I think that was the goal. The numbers that I talked about earlier regarding the census, I think they wanted the new maps to reflect those numbers, and I think it certainly does. I know a lot of the voting groups, they anticipated they were shooting for 9 more additional majority-minority districts. They ended up doing, I think, 13. So instead of 20, what we have now, if this proposal goes through as it stands, it's going to be 33 type districts,
And
one
Rep.
of which would be in New Bedford.
Right, and Rep. Cabral's district kind of goes west, if you will, takes more of the west end.
Yes. Yep.
Rep. Chris Markey's district now, because he represented parts of the west end, he's more north.
Right. Into
In
Ward
your
1.
right.
Yep.
In yours and in Rep. Schmidt's district, if
Yes.
you will. And I didn't know where Rep. Strauss, you said he's...
So Strauss right now currently has parts of Ward 3 below my district.
Right.
South of Sawyer and north of downtown and kind of the northern part of the port where Revere Copper is,
Right.
that area. Now he's going to be kind of switched up to the north of Ward 2 into Ward 1, what I have now. And so Strauss will still be in the city. I'm not sure population-wise what that fits.
Because he gets a Acushnet now.
He gets a third of Acushnet.
A third of
And
Acushnet.
then, so Acushnet's being broken up as it stands into 2 representative districts, which is, arguably, not the best thing for Acushnet. I would have liked to see Acushnet stay intact.
Right.
I've done tons of work in Acushnet. I've talked about a lot of the things on this show that me and my office have been doing in Acushnet. So Strauss will have the bottom precinct, and then
Rep.
Schmidt will come from Rochester.
He like hooks, actually,
He
now.
hooks, a little bit.
Yeah.
And so he'll have the top 2 precincts in Acushnet.
Does it matter on Beacon Hill politically, I guess, is the real question. If there's 5 reps, if there's 4 reps representing New Bedford?
Yes, I think it's better. The interests in New Bedford are better served when they have less reps, because you got to think, when you have more than 1 or 2 reps, that means that those other reps who are there, like Chris Markey and Strauss and others potentially, have districts elsewhere. So their priorities. And that's I'm using them as an example, but that's that applies to all municipalities. You want people who are prioritizing only your district's issues, or your city's issues,
Right.
and I get the opportunity to do that with a district like that. Tony gets the opportunity to do that. Even Strauss, I think, has more of New Bedford than he did. I could be wrong about that. So I think that's good for New Bedford.
1,000 years ago, there were only 3 reps. I
Yeah.
mean, when in the 90s, I remember there was only the 3 reps. It was
Yeah.
Tony, Joe McIntyre, and Bob Kazera. That was it.
Right. Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations about how the district looked, decades ago and everything. And it's funny how they, I was with Norm Earl, who is the rep out of, I don't know where.
Lakeville.
I think Lakeville and
Yeah.
Rochester in that area. And he was telling me that his district used to come all the way down to Ward 3. That district. So it's funny. So this, I think, is a huge. I'm really pleased with this decision, what the House did, putting a district like that entirely in New Bedford. It's about time. New Bedford's a big city. It's not a big city, but it's a moderately sized city.
Yeah.
So I think we should get representation that reflects that.
And the one thing, I mean, that you folks, when you come on the show, you always say is, if even though you represent, quote, part of New Bedford, you're voting for all of New Bedford when you're
Right.
making those decisions.
Right. Everything we vote on applies to everyone in the district.
And I mean, Paul Schmidt had great pride when he said that. He's like, yeah, I don't have a lot in New Bedford, but whatever happens in the South End, I care about just
Right.
as much as my district, because the city goes together.
Yeah. And it's all something that, and it's the good thing for me is that the new neighborhoods, the new precincts in my district, I'm born and raised in New Bedford, so I know all these folks and they're in, so, but it will be tough losing Acushnet. We've done a lot of good things in Acushnet in the last few years. Very short amount of time, but a lot of good work. Hopefully we got them started, and there's a lot of, they're working on a big time sewer water project connecting homes, a large cluster of homes to the sewer line system, and so we've been kind of getting the ball, trying to get the ball rolling on that. So hopefully, whoever takes over, whether it be Schmidt or Strauss or both, they can take the lead on that.
This process is still in the, I guess, comment stage.
Yes.
for lack of a better word, I guess. The public comment is being accepted right now. So what are the timelines, I guess, to try to, that they want to
So
finish
it has
this?
to be done a year before the next election, which is in November of 22, because there's a constitutional requirement that the representatives have to live in their district. So it has to be done by November. And so right now, usually, as you may know, Jim, it's the towns and the cities go first with their precinct thing, and then the state goes.
Correct.
This year, because of COVID and the late census numbers, the state went first, outlining the state rep districts and the senatorial districts. So they have several weeks to put their precincts together, and then we vote on that. So everything should be done within the next month or so.
And we didn't
It's going to
mention-
move quick.
Right, we didn't mention the Senate, but I know that Senator Montigny's district didn't change. He still
Right.
represents the 5 communities that he's had for 10 plus years now.
Yeah, he's should look pretty similar to
Yeah.
how he did. I think a lot of the Senate districts. I know there was this Senate district up north of Boston that's getting a lot of
Well, Brockton,
consternation.
I know Brockton's getting a
in
lot
Brockton
of heat too.
Yeah, the way it's numbers. Sometimes you can't. It's not a magic puzzle.
The one thing that I'm curious at, because I didn't see anything, I'm assuming though that the congressional districts are going to change, but I haven't seen anything.
I
on that.
haven't seen any maps. From what I'm told, Auchincloss's district will be in New Bedford now.
Really?
Yes. Again, I haven't seen any maps. That's what I'm hearing. I think the maps are available,
Yeah.
actually. And it's funny, I should have looked at them. But I think there's going to be a change in New Bedford regarding our congressman.
Okay.
I think it may be Auchincloss might now have Fall River and New Bedford.
Okay. And it's funny because we were talking off camera before the show. I mean, I think the Senate district is kind of like like your district. I mean, it's geographically, I think it's one of the best districts in the
Yes.
state, because I think the people in Mattapoisett do care about what happens in New Bedford. It's so close.
Right.
And New Bedford drives the engine, and these towns can, I don't want to, they contribute.
Yeah.
And it's important that all of them work together.
Yeah, there's a huge, strong sense of community down here on the South Coast.
So
I think that's why it's the South Coast. That example I mentioned earlier. If you take the same amount of geographically and go up north of Boston, there's not that type of community that we have down here. So yeah, we're really fortunate to live where we live, especially with the beaches and everything that's happening
Right.
with offshore wind and all that. So
speaking of offshore wind,
Great
I know that
segue.
he planned that. He's learning his TV
Yeah.
here. Offshore wind's been getting a lot of attention now not that it hasn't, but on Beacon Hill. And I know one of the big proposals, the governor's filed legislation about wind energy and the cost of wind energy and the usage. And I guess I'm simplifying now, but from what I've read in the paper and Commonwealth and some other things, the legislature now and the governor are looking at the importance of wind energy as with regards to climate change and economic development.
right.
I know that's simplistic, but as you were saying, that's a pretty good gauge as to what they're kind
Yeah.
of discussing right now.
Right. So backtracking a little bit, in 2016, when the whole legislative push was created to create an industry for offshore wind, they essentially prioritized price over economic development. And what that means is, I didn't even know what that means when I started looking into this.
Right.
What price? What do they mean by price?
Right.
So what that means is they mean the price to the consumer for the new subsidized electricity. So the electricity that's going to produce from these windmills, how much are they going to be able to sell that to a consumer? So that's the price they're talking about. And so to start, the governor and his administration in 2016, they prioritized, all right, what can these companies get for as far as the low price for the consumer, as opposed to what are they going to do to plant roots in this community, to build out infrastructure, to create an industry in this area for a long-term plan, as opposed to what can we get for the price. Because obviously price and being a clean industry is the ultimate goal. We want to
Correct.
be free of burning fossil fuels. And so at the main sticking point with the legislators and the leaders down here, with the governor, especially Rep. Haddad, Mayor Mitchell, Tony Cabral, they were always concerned with, let's prioritize economic development. Price might not be where it is at this stage in the game of offshore wind. We don't even have any turbines yet.
Right.
So let's worry about getting the ground floor secure, getting the industry set up, the workforce development, before we worry about price, because that will kind of handcuff us as far as where we can go as far as biddings and companies we can bring in here. The announcement last week.
And the governor's changed his tune, really.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
That's basically was the big news last week. Is that he said, "All right, I think it's time now that we, as an industry, we can start prioritizing economic development, making sure we have the footprint to make this an industry that's going to last." This is because New York, New Jersey, Virginia, even on the West Coast, they're getting going on this, and they prioritized economic development in those areas.
And you're right. I mean, the mayor I know has been such
huge
an advocate in driving the importance economically of getting these companies to work and people to live in New Bedford down the road.
Yeah, and thankfully, one of the first meetings I had when I decided to run for office was on that topic, and so thankfully his voice was heard after a certain point. Thankfully, perhaps it could have been heard sooner. I wish this announcement came out last year or 2 years ago. But I think it's certainly a step in the right direction. And you have Chairman Roy, who's head of he chairs the Committee on Utilities and Energy. He agrees with us that we should be prioritizing economic development, getting companies in here, creating an industry for us. And the Speaker, the Speaker Mariano is of the same opinion. So certainly that press release yesterday, that bill that the governor filed last week, was certainly welcomed news. But I think, obviously we're preparing something that was going to get filed in the House. So I think the governor, kind of wanted to beat us to the punch on that. But that's great.
So what does that mean, though, in a sense of what you're trying to do? I mean, are there other reps from places that really don't have wind energy on their radar right now that I don't want to say could sabotage it, but could make life difficult?
Yeah, no. Even in the reports last week, there was I think it was one of the senators, Kennedy, perhaps, noted that prioritizing price should still be the way to go, because at the end of the day, if we're going to start electrifying everything, more people are going to start using electricity, and we should make that a priority for price, short term. So I can't anticipate much blowback given the current makeup of the legislature. I can't, other than arguments like that, I can't see anything, especially with the governor now on board, anything that's going to put a wrench in the plans going forward. You have the lawsuit out in against Vineyard Wind relative to the Martha's Vineyard. So I don't know if that's going to have the same type of teeth as it did last go around with Senator Ted Kennedy when he was here. And I know he fought back on that pretty well. So
well, and I know now Salem's getting more involved because they're trying to.
I was up there yesterday,
and they look as though they're going to have something to do with wind energy.
Yeah, and obviously, being in New Bedford, when you saw that story come out, it's disconcerting a little bit. But there are certain limitations we do have because of that hurricane barrier. So there's certainly going to be development elsewhere outside New Bedford. But they have a lot of room up there in Salem, and especially if if the plan is to move north with wind turbines eventually. I mean that would be a good spot for it. But yeah, so time will tell about where all the pieces are going to be placed along the coast, but certainly there's going to be a lot of pieces placed in New Bedford.
I was going to say, from where you sit, though, even with everything happening right now, from where you sit and what you're seeing and hearing and talking to your colleagues about it, New Bedford still seems to be leading the way when it comes to wind energy in Massachusetts.
From what I can tell, even the speaker's remarks specifically said he wants the South Coast to be the hub of it all. Another thing I'll mention on that story with the governor last week is that he wants that bill takes the bid decision-making process out from the utilities, the state utilities where they are now, and puts them in the hands of the state. I don't know where the House sits on that issue, but that certainly is a big, I think a big issue moving forward on how because the whole process revolves around the bid process.
Right.
You know, price over economic development. That's all related to the bids. So if we're going to change who decides on these bids, I think that's something we should have a broader conversation about.
But isn't it realistic that we should be able in this time to expect both? It really, I mean, even if the price is a little more than low.
At some point the price is going to go down, so long as the industry is growing and the demand keeps going, which it obviously is. So I think that the price issue was going to be less of an issue moving forward because, again, it might start. That's why when cell phones came out, they were $300. Back in 1990, no one could afford them.
They were big too. It's like lifting weights.
So once demand rose, prices went down. It's expected that the same thing's going to do with the price of electricity once these turbines are up and running.
We're talking to State Representative Chris Hendricks here. This is the Beacon Hill Report. One thing I know that's also been in the news big time, and we've talked about it before. It's funny, we're 20 minutes into the program. We haven't talked about COVID yet. But I know the governor's mandate for all in the administration folks to be vaccinated is obviously getting blowback from unions and what have you. And I know the deadline recently passed, and I think there were 5,000, I guess, state employees that still hadn't got it. Curious as to where, just your overall thoughts on that. You've been a big advocate, I know, on the program before, getting the vaccine for folks. So I'm just kind of curious as to what you think, how this is playing out.
Relative to the governor's mandate, I don't know what, you're right, there are thousands of people who aren't either going to adhere to it or get the vaccine. I sense, if it's either getting the vaccine or getting weekly tests, I think that's a reasonable, getting tested weekly I think is a reasonable thing. And so I don't think there are any constitutional issues. I think the constitutionality of these types of mandates are completely fine. I mean, there's going back to 1913, you can read the case law about it. There's plenty of public policy related opinions on that. So I don't think there's any constitutional problems with it. I don't know how he's going to handle, all these folks who aren't fitting into this mandate. What they're going to do? Are they going to just fire them all, or? I would like to see them just submit to weekly testing as opposed to affecting any of their jobs.
And this is just the administration side, from my understanding.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we'll have to wait and see. I know they recently challenged it in court, and I think that was an unsuccessful challenge.
Yeah, they keep, I guess, 2 or 3 of them now.
Yeah, the correctional officers.
Correctional officers, state police. I think it's 2 so far.
Yeah.
And they've been denied.
Yeah. So obviously, I'd like I know several people who are dead now who chose not to get the vaccine. So I'm at a point personally where I'm not going to convince people, you want to get the vaccine, I'll do what I can to make sure you get it. But if people don't want to get it, they're not going to get it. So, so I think the steps, if they choose not to, should be reasonable. Let's get them tested. Let's keep an eye on them. I know that costs resources and money, but I think that's probably the safest way to go on that.
What about the legislative side? I don't think that, I haven't read anything that the legislature is requiring staffs to.
I haven't, aside from actual state house people, that mandate that we put in place, an actual, even still, I don't even think that was a bill. I think that's whatever it's called for action that's just in the State House.
So there is that.
There is that for employees, for legislators.
Right.
And if we don't have vaccination, I forget the date, I think it might be November 1st. If we don't provide proof of vaccination before that, then we're able to work remotely in the State House. So it's encouraged. I during the debate, there was numbers thrown out about how many people aren't vaccinated. So I forget what that number is. Hopefully it's less than what it was. But I think by November 1st it's going to be a mandate. But I don't see any type of legislative mandate. I haven't heard of anything, like you said, coming down the line as far as voting on something and making something statewide for state workers or anything like that. I think what the governor has already done, I think, is probably the extent of it.
Because eventually, I mean, you guys are still theoretically working remotely.
Right.
You were joking talking to your aide Karen that you haven't seen her in a while because you've talked to her every day, but you guys haven't had, physical contact in forever. I mean, and I'm sure. I mean, you were talking about that last time here. That's one of the the issues with being a representative is if you don't have that physical
It's
contact
everything.
talking to your colleagues, as you're walking down the hall trying to get something. And I know a lot of legislators say a lot of stuff actually gets done that way.
Yeah, no, it's relationship building. As far as I'm concerned, that's the most important thing about being an effective legislator.
Is there a talk about when you might go back into the State House?
I don't know exactly. I would presume around when that November 1st, when that requirement needs to be satisfied. I would presume around that time, but I'm not sure. But it's an absolute detriment to all the legislators out there, because like I said, the easiest, if you want to get things done, the best way to do it is have a strong relationship with the person who needs to do that.
And the
thing.
staffs as well. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't understand, I think, a lot of ways that your staff can get a lot done when they're talking to other staff,
Yes.
or just in the administration side when you're talking to, in the treasurer's office or Secretary of State's or something like
Yeah.
that. You're having meetings and things like that.
Just to meet people, to know who to ask for certain
Correct.
things. Yeah. So that's what we're missing out on. Hopefully that's coming to an end, but yeah, it certainly is. It's a lousy situation when you have to build relationships over the phone, and that's why as part of the Gateway Cities Caucus, I'm in that caucus. We've had like Gateway City tours, for the last several months. A couple weeks ago, we were in New Bedford. Went to New Bedford, Fall River, and Attleboro. Yesterday, we were in Salem, Peabody, and Lynn. But those types of things, people are like, why the hell did you come all the way up here to north of Boston? Because I wanted to see people. That's how you build relationships. That's how you talk to people. So I think it's the city of New Bedford will be better off with reps who know other reps. So we're going to try to keep doing that as time goes. But
Got a couple minutes left. I want to give you a chance, just some things that you're actually working on right now that you want to sort of promote or talk about. That
yeah, no, we still have that issue in PJ in Acushnet, that PJ Keating nuisance issue. As you know, it's a large quarry that's kind of nestled in a neighborhood.
It's been there for so long,
for
too.
over 100 years.
Yeah.
And old owners were always agreeable to addressing issues relative to nuisance with the community. These owners, not so much. So it's been a lot of litigation. I won't rehash that, all the ins and outs of it, but there's a lot going on relative to that. So I'll probably be working on that. In Acushnet, we also have that big sewer system project that we're trying to get, lay the ground floor on. And you also have another environmental issue in New Bedford with the parallel products issue that's still going on. They submitted their final proposal, which was sent back by the state because it wasn't adequate.
Right.
So they're still working on that. As far as I know, they're still working on that redraft. So that issue is still unfolding as well.
And I would assume, knowing you, that even when the district changes and what have you, because no matter what, the district's going to change, but there are those issues that you're still going to look at. Parallel product won't be theoretically in your district,
right.
but
And theoretically, it's not even my district now, but
you're invested in
Right.
it so much that you're still going to be.
right, because obviously an issue like that, it
Affects
can
everything.
affect all sorts of neighborhoods. So yeah, that's going to be kind of something I'm going to have to learn along the way, is how to hand off certain issues, how to keep. I hope that I'll be involved in a lot of these issues still. Working with the other reps, and vice versa.
Well, it's good seeing you.
Likewise.
Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
And we should see you in a couple more weeks, that's for sure. Or a couple more months, I should say.
I'll be here.
And you'll be different. You'll be in a different neighborhood. So
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Reports. Chris Hendricks, our guest, State Representative in New Bedford, and I'm Jim Marshall. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.